My name is Alex Carter, 42 years old, a non-commissioned officer with the 82nd Airborne Division. By then, I had served in the military for nearly 2 decades. When it all began, I was stationed at a forward outpost near Kandahar, Afghanistan. The heat was scorching. Sand and wind were like the default seasoning in every meal. We took turns on watch, checked equipment, and coordinated logistics, a steady routine everyone knew by heart. One afternoon, when I was off duty, I opened my laptop to see if there was any email from home. And then, I saw it, the subject line, "We should grow up a little," a subject line colder than a desert night. I opened the email, just 3 short lines. She said she had filed for divorce. She had withdrawn all the money from our joint account. And now she was living with someone new, a guy named Tyler, in our own house in Spokane. I read it again, then closed the laptop. No one around me knew what had just happened. I walked to the communal bathroom and let the water run over me, feeling like I was washing away some layer of memories. Then, I put on my uniform and went back to duty as usual. No one noticed anything different. That night, back in my quarters, I sent her a single reply: "Understood." No tears, no accusations. I'm not in the habit of begging anyone to come back, nor do I plead to hold on to something that no longer belongs to me. Rodriguez, my roommate, glanced over from the book he was reading. "You okay, man?" I nodded. "Yeah, just some family stuff." He didn't press further. In the military, people know when to leave you alone. The truth is, I wasn't all that surprised. About 6 months before I deployed, I had started noticing something was off. It wasn't a sudden shock, but 100 little pieces, falling apart slowly. Sophie, my wife, began to grow distant. She stopped asking how my day was. She started working late at the dental clinic where she was a receptionist. She signed up for gym classes 3 times a week, but always came home looking fresh, like she'd been for a stroll. She bought new clothes, made friends I'd never met, changed her phone password, and often said she needed her own space. I'm not the kind of man who snoops or secretly checks his wife's phone. I don't follow her around or get jealous over nothing, but I'm not blind. Instead of confronting her, I chose to prepare quietly. I organized important documents, birth certificates, house deeds, military insurance, and stored them in a small locker across town. My grandfather's watch, the silver bracelet my mother left me, things that mattered. I also opened a separate account, transferring small portions of my paycheck, just enough that she wouldn't notice, but enough to keep me from being left with nothing if the worst happened. I still remember our goodbye hug at the airport that day. She said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" No trembling voice, no tears, like I was a coworker heading out for a short business trip, not a husband going into a war zone. I should have known right then, but honestly, I still hoped I was wrong, that it was just temporary distance, that when I came back, things would be like they were. I was wrong, and she didn't know. I was ready for this moment. At the time, I had no idea how far things would go, that behind that cold email was a chain of ruthless, calculated decisions, that the woman I once loved could team up with a man with a criminal record and plot against me, while I was halfway across the world, holding a rifle for this country. But that wasn't the end, because I've never been the one to start a fight. But once it begins, I'm the one who finishes it. There's something I've learned in the military, and in life: silence isn't always a weakness. Sometimes silence is the sign of someone watching, waiting, and preparing. Sophie thought I didn't know anything, thought her changes were too subtle for me to notice, but I saw it all. I just chose not to speak. I started with simple things. No arguments, no resentment, just being more careful with what mattered. Documents like birth certificates, military insurance, house contracts, I put in an iron box and sent to a mini storage unit across town. My grandfather's old wristwatch, the silver spoons my mother brought from Georgia when she was alive, I stored them there too. Not because I thought Sophie would take them, but because I wasn't sure I could trust her anymore. I also opened a new account at a different bank. Not to hide, but to survive if the worst came. I didn't move much, just a small portion of my paycheck each month. Enough that she wouldn't notice, and enough that I wouldn't start from zero if I had to rebuild. Sophie asked me once, when she saw me reviewing VA loan paperwork, "What are you doing? Do you suspect me?" I smiled, shook my head, just checking how much we still owe. In truth, I was confirming. Legally, the house was still in my name. I had added her to the deed after we married because I thought that's what couples do. But VA loans don't allow joint names, so at least I still held on to something. I remember clearly the day we moved into that house. 2014, 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, a quiet neighborhood, not a fancy mansion, but a home, a dream, a beginning. I laid the kitchen floor myself, painted the fence. Sophie stood nearby, holding a glass of lemonade, smiling and saying, "You're such an 80s kind of guy." I laughed, but inside I felt warm, because I knew I was trying to do the best I could. Then my father passed. A sudden heart attack while shoveling snow in the driveway. 3 years later, my mother died of lung cancer. Even though she never smoked, life is never fair. They left me a little money. Not much, but enough for Sophie and me to pay off student loans and save a bit. I thought we'd be okay. But each time I came back from a mission, I felt Sophie slipping further away. At first, it was her eyes not lighting up when I walked through the door. Then, she stopped liking it when I called too often. She said her friends were living new lives after divorces. That sometimes, she and I had nothing in common except our marriage license. I suggested marriage counseling once. She just laughed and said, "We're fine. It's just a phase." But then came weekends out with friends, unread messages. Those are late nights at work, and a coldness I couldn't name anymore. I wanted to believe she was just tired. That thing would be okay when I got back. But I couldn't ignore my instincts. As a soldier, I learned to trust my gut. I didn't know exactly what would happen. I just knew I had to be ready, not to attack anyone, but to not be swept away when the wave hit. I still remember the light before I deployed. We hugged at the airport. She wished me take care. Nothing more. That hug had no warmth. It was like saying goodbye to someone you've already decided not to wait for. I boarded the plane with a quiet weight in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, just an emptiness. Like I'd lost something no one bothered to tell me about. But there's one thing Sophie didn't know. I can be silent, but I'm not passive. I may not speak, but I'm always watching. And when it's time, I won't let anyone take what I've bled and sweated to build. I didn't start the fight, but when it came, I'd be the one to end it. 2 weeks after that icy divorce email, I was eating dinner in the field mess hall when my phone pinged with a bank alert. I opened it. $88,500. The amount just withdrawn from our joint account. The one I thought Sophie had already emptied. I didn't say a word, just set my fork down on the tray, staring at the number like it had betrayed me again. I checked the transaction history. Small withdrawals started right after I deployed. Steady, gradual. Then, all at once, large sums regular like someone knew I couldn't check in time from the other side of the world. I grabbed my phone, walked straight to the fixed-line phone area, and called the bank. After verification, they confirmed that most of the money had been transferred to another personal account. Not in my name. Not in Sophie's either. I stood silent in the camp hallway, surrounded by soldiers laughing, calling home, and sharing everyday stories. And there I was, holding the phone, watching my life being gnawed away like prey caught in a trap. Rodriguez saw me that night and asked point blank, "Family stuff again?" I nodded. She took all the money, moved the guy in, and now transferring money in some way I don't understand. Rodriguez didn't offer advice. No, hang in there. No, you deserve better. Just one question. What are you gonna do? That question woke me up. I didn't know, but I'd figure it out. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into our home security system. Something Sophie probably forgot I still had access to. Minutes later, the screen showed Tyler, my wife's new boyfriend, casually walking my dog in the backyard. He was wearing my Seahawks hoodie, the one I wore on weekends, using the coffee mug I left in the kitchen. And Sophie, laughing with him in the kitchen. I'd retiled myself during my last leave. The feeling then wasn't exactly anger, nor was it pain. It was cold. Cold enough to make me clear-headed. If this was a game, I needed a plan. I started writing a to-do list. Call Eli, an old army buddy, now a lawyer. Review all VA loan documents. Go through bank records. Lock down access to my military retirement accounts. And most importantly, don't let Sophie know I'd gone proactive. The next morning, I emailed Eli, "Need legal advice. Urgent and discreet." An hour later, he called back on a secure line. By the end of the call, I knew exactly what to do. I didn't need to confront anyone. Didn't need to yell in anyone's face. I just needed to wait and watch. 2 months later, I returned to the States. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't contact Sophie. Just checked into a small hotel under a fake name. Met Eli at a diner outside town. He slid a folder across the table. Here's everything you need. And something interesting. I opened it. A refinancing application for my house, a $330,000 loan, in my name and someone named Tyler. But my signature, it wasn't mine. Sloppy. Missing a middle initial. Wrong name. She forged my signature to get the loan? I asked, though I already knew. Eli nodded, and Tyler's listed as co-borrower. The guy's got a record. 2 DUIs and 1 count of financial fraud. I gripped the folder. Forging a VA loan application is a federal crime, right? Exactly. Eli continued. Tyler's worked with a broker named Daniel Spencer. And guess what? Spencer's preparing to list your house. I froze. Sophie wants to sell my house? Very likely. Spencer and Tyler have done business before. Both have been tied to shady real estate deals. This wasn't about marriage anymore. This was a bigger game planned with roles, and I was just a pawn they pushed aside. Have they done this to anyone else? I asked. Eli nodded. We found at least 3 cases, all spouses of deployed soldiers. I didn't feel sad anymore, just clear. I went to the bank handling the refinance, showed my military ID and my real signature, and compared it to the forged documents. The manager's face went pale. We'll have to report this immediately. Good. I've already filed a report with the police. That night, Sophie texted, Alex, what did you say to the bank? Tyler says someone's asking about the loan application. I didn't reply. 2 days later, I filed a formal complaint with the court, blocking any property transfers without my presence. The next day, Sophie called. I let it ring until it stopped. Her voicemail played. Alex, we need to talk. This doesn't have to go this far. Listening to it, I gave a small smile. The first line of her divorce email was also, we should grow up a little, and I thought, now I'm doing just that. I didn't call Sophie back, nor did I respond to any of her texts or emails after the bank caught the forged refinance papers. I didn't need to hear another word. I chose action. The next day, I met with Thompson, the bank fraud investigator. He was a small guy, slightly hunched, with a coffee stain on his tie, but eyes sharp as a blade. When I showed him the proof, forged signature, Tyler's criminal record, the original VA loan in my name only, he sat quietly for a moment, then sighed. This isn't new, Carter. We see cases like this. One spouse is away, the other sees an opportunity, and slides. I asked, what now? We've frozen the account receiving the loan funds, but half the money, it's already gone. I sat up. How much? Close to $15,000. All transferred to a Daniel Spencer. I frowned. That name wasn't new. Eli had mentioned him. Real estate guy, right? Thompson nodded. He runs a brokerage, specializes in quick deals. Cash in, cash out. Hard to trace. I didn't say anything, just looked at him and said, I need names, accounts, and transfer history. If we need a court order, I'll handle it. Right after, I called Eli. Daniel Spencer's getting money from the loan, tied to Tyler. I need you to dig deeper. An hour later, he called back. Got it. Spencer's the one listing your house. But more than that, he's worked with Tyler on at least 3 other deals. I sat stunned. And Sophie? Does she know this is a scam? Eli hesitated. Not clear yet. But we have evidence Spencer and Tyler have records, a pattern of fraud. If she's co-signed or helped, then I'm not one for conspiracy theories. But this was too obvious now. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was organized, planned, manipulative. And me, I was just one link in a chain of victims they picked. That day, I sent all the home security footage to the FBI. A call came from Agent Patel the next morning. Her voice was calm but urgent. We've been tracking Spencer and Ryan, Tyler's real name, for a while. Your evidence helps us establish a federal crime pattern. I asked directly, what about Sophie? Patel spoke slowly. We're still determining her involvement. If she actively participated, she'd be charged. If she was manipulated, she'll be a witness. That evening, I got a text from Sophie. Alex, I need to see you.
Urgent.
Meet at Riverfront Park, noon tomorrow. I didn't react, just screenshot it and send it to Eli. What should I do? He replied, don't go. But let's see what she does when she thinks you're coming. At 9:30 the next morning, Eli and I sat in a car parked a block from my old house. At 9:45, Sophie drove off, heading toward the park, as planned. 20 minutes later, another car pulled up, a real estate logo on the door. Daniel Spencer stepped out. Tyler greeted him. They shook hands, then went inside. Eli looked at me. Follow them. I shook my head and pulled out my phone. No need. I've got cameras inside and outside the house. Everything's auto-recorded and stored on the cloud. I opened the app and turned up the volume. Spencer was taking photos. Tyler pointed around. List it this week, Spencer said. Got a buyer ready to pay cash. How much? Tyler asked. List at $470. They'll pay $420. Like always. What about her husband? Tyler lowered his voice. Spencer smirked. Soldiers like him? They yell a bit, then shut up. Nothing to worry about. I tilted the screen toward Eli. He started recording it all on his phone. I shared the live stream access with the FBI. A short message was attached. Happening now. 30 minutes later, FBI vehicles rolled in. I stood at a distance, watching Spencer and Tyler cuffed and led out. Right then, my phone buzzed. Agent Patel, we've got evidence of financial fraud, federal conspiracy, and forged documents. Thank you. I asked, what about Sophie? Patel paused. She just arrived at the scene. Seems she didn't know the FBI was coming. She's panicking. We're taking her statement. I sat still in the car, looking out the window. Sophie stood on the front lawn, hand over her mouth, eyes wide. No more calm, no more excuses. I asked, is she under arrest? Patel answered, depends on her involvement and on whether you want to press charges. I stayed quiet, not out of hesitation, but because, after everything, I needed a moment to breathe, to realize I didn't just reclaim justice. I stopped this from happening to others. I haven't seen Sophie since the day the FBI cuffed those two in front of the house. She called. She texted, at first angry, then scared, and finally asking for forgiveness. I didn't know it was that serious. I thought you were hiding money, planning to leave me first. I didn't want it to go this far. I didn't respond. I stayed silent when I was betrayed. I stayed silent when my bank account was wiped. And now, I chose silence again, because some things don't need explaining. Not to someone who chose to walk away while I was in the middle of a war. She wasn't arrested. With the details, her statement, and a legal agreement, Sophie agreed to repay all the money she took, sign away any claim to the house, my assets, or military pension, and admit to forging my signature. In return, I didn't pursue criminal charges. Fair deal, cold, final, and lighter than any prison sentence could be. Because for me, letting go was the final judgment. 6 months after that divorce email, all the legal papers were finalized. A 13-year marriage, closed with a folder, no tears, no goodbye hugs, no broken promises left hanging. A few weeks later, I got a call from Agent Patel. Alex, we've got the verdict. Jeremy Ryan, 8 years. Daniel Spencer, 12 years. Both pleaded guilty and named others involved. I was quiet for a moment. Thanks for letting me know. One more thing, Patel said. Thanks to your evidence and testimony, we confirmed 11 other military families targeted the same way. Your case was the key to connecting it all. I nodded, though she couldn't see. At least, I didn't suffer for nothing. After that call, I sat on the porch of a small rented apartment in Spokane, looked at the sky, listened to the cars on the road. For the first time in months, I felt real stillness. Not the emptiness after a shock, not the calm before a counterattack, but the feeling I'd walked the path I needed to. Now, I could choose my own road again. I sold the old house, not because I didn't win the case, but because I couldn't live in a place that was once a home, then turned into a battlefield. The walls, even freshly painted, the wood floor I laid, the kitchen corner where I made coffee on weekend mornings, they all carried pain. I didn't want my steps to keep treading on old memories. Forgiven or not, I had to move on. I used the money from the sale to buy a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres. A creek ran through the back. No neighbors, no car horns, just forest, wind, and true peace. I took early retirement after 20 years in the military. I'd given enough, sacrificed enough. I adopted a dog, a German shepherd named Scout. The first day he arrived, he ran around the new yard, then sprawled out under the porch like he'd lived there forever. I looked at him and thought, maybe we're both learning to start over. I don't work an office job, didn't go back to Spokane, just took small jobs in the nearby town, fixing fences, building tables, constructing sheds. I've always liked working with my hands. Keeps me quiet without feeling empty. My military pension covers what I need. I don't want much, just peace and something no one can take away. One October evening, I got a letter from a woman in Fort Worth, Texas. Her husband was a Navy sailor, and Jeremy and Spencer's group had tried to scam them with the same playbook. Thanks to my case, the FBI stepped in just in time, and her family kept their home. The letter read, "We don't know each other, but because of you, we didn't lose everything. When you could have stayed silent, you spoke up. When it would have been easy to give up, you fought. And when others only thought of themselves, you helped people you've never met. Thank you for not turning your back on justice." I read it over and over. Then I folded it and taped it to the fridge. So on weary days, I'd remember. Sometimes, what you reclaim isn't just for you. I'm not angry at Sophie anymore. No regrets either. She chose her path, and I chose one without looking back. I heard she moved back near her mom's place. Works at a different clinic now, starting over. I don't need to know more than that. One afternoon, I stood in front of the wooden house I just finished building. Scout lay at my feet. Blue sky. Leaves are falling gently. For the first time, I felt my heart didn't need to stay on guard. I'd walked through pain, through betrayal, through anger that could have swallowed me whole. And what remained was a man who knew what he was living for. I have nothing left to lose, but nothing left to regret either, because what I've built after it all is my own life. A life no one can steal, no one can forge, no one can push me away.